Well, it's arguably one of the most talked about questions of late in this province. Are the wealthy really paying their fair share? Now, Quebec Solidaire says no. They want to impose higher taxes on the wealthiest Quebecers. Their plan, an annual tax of 1% on fortunes between $25 and $100 million and 2% on wealth above $100 million. Our next guest, who so happens to be studying taxation right now, disagrees with that idea, and he believes the rich are already paying enough. Let's head over now to William Dumoulin, a master's student over at Université de Sherbrooke. William, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me.
So obviously, as I mentioned off the top, big debate in this province right now on wealth taxes. Quebec Solidaire has their proposals. Why do you think proposals like the one from Quebec Solidaire is the wrong way to tackle how much the wealthy pay?
So when you look at the data, what's interesting to see is that when you look at the top 2% of Quebecers, they contribute at around 34% of all income taxes perceived in the nation. So that means they're paying 17 times more in income taxes than their share of the population. So at the start, I don't think they're not paying their fair share. And then you look at what should our objectives be. Should it be to always tax more and look at more ways of giving more money to the government? Or should it be to create more wealth, create more jobs? So naturally, the government raises more money through taxes, and then we can fund our services.
What do you say to the notion, well, but they can afford it? I hear this all the time. There's some, well-known people that show up in the media and say, okay, yeah, they pay a lot right now, but they can afford 1 or 2 more percent. So what do you say to that?
Maybe they can, but is that really what we want? These people that have this money, it's not the money that they're using for nothing. They're investing, they're starting companies, and if they're spending, we're collecting consumption tax off that. So they're making the economy run, and I'm not sure the money will be better managed if it's the government that has it than if it's entrepreneurs and wealth creators.
I want to go back to what we start off with when your first point, right? That 2% of the population pays 34% of all income tax. Yeah. I wonder, if we look at the rest of Canada or in the US or around the world, are other places in the same ballpark, or are we already higher than most places in Quebec?
Actually, since most Western countries have a progressive tax system, it's not exactly 34%, but everywhere in the world, the rich pay a huge share of all income taxes perceived, which is logical because they have a higher capacity to pay than people at the lower end of the economy spectrum. So it's pretty comparable when you check most countries in the West.
Gotcha. And is there anything to be said about, maybe not the top 2%, but other earners and the share that they take on of taxes that are paid?
Well, if you look at the top 20%, which is, I think, over 70K in annual revenue, we're talking about almost 70% of all the taxes in Quebec.
Gotcha. So those who make more than $70,000 a year are responsible for 70% of all income taxes taken in.
Exactly, because actually in Quebec, around 40% of all Quebecers don't pay taxes. So it's logical in our system that the higher earners pay a huge amount of all the taxes.
What do you think people are missing here? And, again, I'm looking at some very wealthy people who are, making the case. There's this group, Millionaires for Humanity, right? Yeah. And they say, you know what, we should be paying more because we are for humanity. What do you think they're getting wrong when you hear from millionaires who advocate for more taxes?
Well, nothing's stopping them from sending a check to the government voluntarily. But for the others who are creating jobs, who are starting businesses, who are investing in our economy, I think what we're missing is that we don't need to tax them more than what we're already doing. We already have the highest burden, tax burden, one of the highest in the West. I think we're 11th in the West in terms of tax burden. And we're already spending a lot of money government-wise. So I think the best thing to do is to let the money in the economy, let it flourish, because we haven't been creating much wealth in this past decade, as much in Canada as in Quebec.
And let me ask you if your research shows if there's any limit, because we can, it's just 1%. Oh, it's just 2 more percent, right? But is there a limit where we do see people and capital leave a jurisdiction if taxes like this are imposed, if the taxes get too high? And what's our limit?
There's not a specific limit in the research, but what we do see is when there's a hike, at the moment of the hike, some people move out of the country. But there's no specific limit. But obviously, there are limits in terms of if you want to increase economic growth, you can't have taxes that are crazy high, because every dollar you take from the economy is a dollar that's not creating wealth.
With François Dumoulin, he's a master's student studying taxation at Université de Sherbrooke. William, the other side of things, the tax dollars that are taken in by the government and how they're used. What's your case that, in fact, the government has enough money brought in already, they're just not using it well?
Well, right now, when we look at the public spending as share of the GDP, we're 7th in the OECD in terms of government spending. So we're already very high. I think we're over 50% of the GDP is public sector spending. So listen, since 2019, 55% of all jobs created in the job sector have been in the public sector. So I think the government even has too much money, because they're giving subsidies, billions of dollars to a private corporation. We should just get out of the way and let private corporations flourish instead of always intervening in the economy.
We started off here by saying, the rich are paying enough. Would you go beyond that and make a case that they're paying too much? Would you try and actually lower taxes on that wealthiest 2%?
I don't think so, because right now we're at a big budget deficit. So I don't think it would be right to start tackling income taxes for the rich. I think right now what we need to do is just let the rich generate growth, and naturally we will get rid of our deficit. But I don't think we have the means right now to attack that, and I don't think it's politically viable to reduce income taxes on the rich.
So maybe not on the rich, but what about those, and I don't know if people will say someone who makes $70,000 a year, if they're rich or not in Quebec. I know you're saying they're the top 20% in this province. What about those people? Like, do they need tax relief? Is that a group that actually the government should look into lowering taxes on those, who are in the top 20% or the top 15%?
Maybe, because what we see is that if we reduce money on that, it will stimulate the economy, obviously. And right now there's a lot of inflation. There's a lot of increases at the grocery store and all that. So they definitely need relief. But as I said before, we need to find a balance, because right now we're in a budget deficit. So we don't want to increase that even more.
William, in all your time studying taxation, what's the most surprising thing? What do you think all of our listeners should know about taxation before I let you go?
Well, I think I mentioned it before, but the fact that the top 2% pays 17% more than their share of the population, I think that was something that was pretty surprising to me, and that the 40% of the population don't pay any income tax. That's something that it's pretty surprising. It's not very well known.
Mm-hmm. William, listen, we'll leave it there. I want to thank you so much for coming on with us.
Thank you.
That's William Dumoulin. He's a master's student. He studies taxation at the Université de Sherbrooke.
Hello, Canada.
This is Bryan Adams Radio, hosted by Bryan Adams himself.
We'll play a few of mine, a ton of my favorites, and some must-hear behind-the-scenes stories from the world of rock and roll. We're coming to get you! One thing about doing rock and roll so long is you end up meeting a lot of the people that you admire. Sometimes you even get to work with them.
It's only love, and that's all. Bryan Adams Radio. I'm coming back to you. Now available on the free iHeartRadio app. Everybody